My name is Norm Finkelstein. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I've written a lot on the Israel-Palestine conflict. I understand that the genesis, the origin of my coming to speak was to lend support to the twinning relationship between Bethlehem and Glasgow. It happens that during what was called the First Intifada, which began on December 7th, 1987, it was a overwhelmingly nonviolent civil resistance to the Israeli occupation. It began in Jabalia camp in Gaza, but it quickly spread to the West Bank. And in August 1988, I went to live with two families, one in Hebron, and the other was in a little village, not little, but a medium-sized village called Beit Sahor, which is right outside Bethlehem. And so I had a lot of contact with Bethlehem. I went every summer from 1988 to roughly 1995. So I got to know the city, and even behind me, I don't think you can see it, but I have a lot of wood carvings from Bethlehem. That was one of their specialties. So I have more familiarity actually with the Bethlehem. There are two major villages, Bethlehem, Beit Jala, and Beit Sahor, in that area. They're known as, for whatever it's worth, and it's probably not worth much anymore, they were basically Christian Palestinian villages, and Bethlehem being significantly Christian. Things have changed so much, it's almost 40 years ago now, but that was my introduction to Palestine. Now we're going to fast forward to the present, and there's no point in trying to put a positive spin on what's happening. We're at the moment of truth. The moment of truth in four respects. Number one, I know this will sound very downbeat, but I believe in treating adults like adults. There is no more Gaza. Gaza has been destroyed. The estimates are 50% of all the infrastructure in Gaza is no longer there. It's gone. It's as if you walk down the city block and every second building is gone, or you walk down the city block and on each block, one side or the other is no longer there. And there's no possibility whatsoever that Israel will allow for the rebuilding of Gaza. Number one, you can't rebuild Gaza. The estimates are about 45 million tons of rubble in Gaza, and they estimate it would take about 10 to 15 years just to clear out the rubble. The rubble is mixed in with a lot of unexploded ordnance and toxic substances like asbestos. And so even if you could rebuild Gaza, which I don't believe is physically possible, Israel won't allow it. It's simply going to use the pretext of the Hamas tunnels, in my opinion, mostly fantasy, of the Hamas tunnels as a grounds for saying we're not going to let in any cement because Hamas will use it to reconstruct its tunnel network. Israel has already done that. It did that after Operation Cast Lead in 2008-9. It didn't let in any cement for a very long time. Well, you don't need a MIT engineer to figure out that without cement you can't rebuild. So Gaza is gone, but that was only the first part of Israel's end game. The second end game is to finally rid itself of Hezbollah. And it's right now in that process. I think it's going to be very rough for Hezbollah to survive this war. It's not a war. Israel doesn't wage wars, it wages annihilations. I think it's going to be very tough for Hezbollah. But Hezbollah is only a way station to the big Megillah, and the big Megillah is obviously Iran. And so the Hezbollah aspect will probably go on for maybe a month or two, and then they're going to put in their crosshairs Iran. And in that process, it's quite likely that Israel will use the war with, it's not, again, I call it a war, it's not a war, will use the annihilation of Lebanon as a pretext for carrying out a mass ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, which will include Bethlehem. They've been waiting for this moment, you can say, since 1967, the moment to use the cover of war to carry out that second ethnic cleansing, the first having occurred in 1948. A minor one occurred in 1967. Israel expelled about 300,000 Palestinians in 67, but that was because of the shortness of time. It was just 6 days, so they can just carry out what you might call a limited ethnic cleansing. But now they'll have the cover of this war with Lebanon to do in one fell swoop what they've been doing incrementally since 1967. But obviously it's escalated a lot in the last year, and they will try to carry out a mass ethnic cleansing. So it's very grim. Anybody who says that force doesn't work just doesn't want to face the reality that 9 times out of 10, force does work. It doesn't work permanently, but most states don't calculate permanently. You know, there was a famous economic conference where economists gathered and they were talking about in the long run this, and in the long run that, and the long run that. And then the most eminent economist of his era, John Maynard Keynes, he famously stood up and said, in the long run, we're dead. Meaning that there's no point in calculating in the long run. Or let's just say it's not politically very useful. Ideologically, it's useful that you are a link in a chain, that it may not occur in your lifetime, it may not occur in the next lifetime, but you're a link in the chain of the long struggle. And one has reason to hope, though it's dimmer as civilization nears the threshold of complete self-destruction. But it's useful, I think, to think of yourself as a link in the chain of trying to make this a better world. But politically, force does work. And right now, we're in stage 2. Gaza is no more. And it's quite possible that Hezbollah will be no more within the next month or two. And it's quite possible that the West Bank will be no more. That's a very grim prognosis, obviously. And if I was called here to cheer people up, I'm incapable of doing that, because I believe we should treat adults as adults. So having said that, what's my message? My message is you really don't know what's going to happen. You don't. I'm telling you what the tendencies are now. But the tendency is not a certitude. And each of us can do his or her share to basically, my modus operandi has been ignore what's happening to the left of you, ignore what's happening to the right of you, ignore what's happening behind you, and who knows what's going to happen ahead of you. You just keep working. You keep doing what you can do, because that's the right thing to do. Whether it will have any, to use a crude expression, whether it will have any payoff, I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue. I'm very grim right now, but it doesn't stop me. I just say, okay, I have to finish. I'm writing a new book on Gaza. I have to work on it. I have to do this today, do that tomorrow. And part of me says, what are you doing? Why are you working on this stupid book? Because people are dying today. It's already 350 people killed. 350 people killed just today. You realize by the end of the day, as many civilians will be killed in Lebanon as half as many as were killed on October 7th. There are 800 civilians killed on October 7th. And just today in Lebanon, it'll be half. Would anyone dare make the comparison that Israel has already committed a 1/2 of October 7th? Would anyone even dare make that comparison? Of course you can't, because Jewish life is special. Jewish life is special. You can't compare. But that's the fact. I don't think we should do whatever we do. We should do it because it's the right thing to do, and without any expectation about the results. I don't know what the result will be. I think we should the results, as you all know, we have so little control over. And the results are the product of 10,000 factors. We have control over 1,000th part of one factor. But with that 1,000th part, we should do what we can do. That's how I see it.